Architect Dikshu Kukreja is the powerhouse behind CP Kukreja Architects, a firm that was started in 1969 by his father and legendary architect CP Kukreja. CPKA has a portfolio of 1,000 plus projects and clients from more than 30 countries in the last 50 years of practice. The firm is ranked amongst the top 100 architecture firms in the world. CPKA is known for path-breaking projects like the JNU Yashobhoomi, Ayodhya Masterplan, India Pavilion at the World Expo in Dubai and more. Embark on a visionary journey with architect Dikshu Kukreja in design talks with Verticaa Dvivedi.
To begin with, I would like to go to your early days. Were you always inclined to architecture? How was your journey? How did it all shape up?
I think it's very interesting because really when I look back when I was maybe 4 or 5 years old, that kind of age, I remember my parents, at that time you didn't have as many options for recreation as you perhaps do today. So at that time it would be often we would go for picnics, just the family picnics, and invariably they would be around beautiful monuments in Delhi. And whenever we would go there, I don't know why and how, but I naturally would be inclined to the buildings there. And I would really enjoy them. I would go and touch them. I would see the space in that very sort of formative age. But it did affect me. I loved being around those buildings. So that was at that age. And then when one was growing up and I realized that my father is a prominent architect. So when people start asking you that what do you want to be when you grow up, I would just start saying that I want to be an architect. And to that, whenever my father heard that, he would start questioning that why would you want to be an architect? You should be something else. I'm one. Why do you want to be one? So that kind of a questioning from his side started making me feel that probably he thinks I'm not as good as him or good enough to be an architect. Okay. And that brought in further resolve into me that I have to be one and I must prove it to my father that I can be a decent architect. So that's where I guess my mind was made up, and that's my nature. Once I decide on something, then I don't look left or right. So there was never any other thought that came to my mind that I should not be an architect.
Okay, so do you remember any kind of lessons that you've learned from your father, the legendary architect CP Kukreja?
Well, of course. I mean, living with him, there have been lessons learned all through my life. Some consciously, but most subconsciously. And I think one of the most important lessons that I learned from him was, or amongst the most important, one was that by nature, how important it is to be humble. His humility, I think, is unmatched. I haven't met anyone in my life so far who can be as humble as he can. The other aspect is that as a human being, how important it is to be sensitive and considerate. We often, in the rat race of life, we forget, we begin to pushing, jostling for our own personal agenda. And that is something he never believed in. He always believed that, we have come into this world to do something for a broader cause. Now, this might start sounding philosophical, but in our family, it was true. And this was my biggest learning from him, that yes, you have your own agendas in life. We all come here with a certain agenda and we have a certain purpose. But that purpose needs to be seen in a broader perspective, that what can we do to make lives of people around us also improved, better. And that is something that has been a big lesson learned from him.
As a second generation architect, who has a father like architect CP Kukreja, right? Legendary architect with so much of work already done. Did you ever feel the kind of pressure or weight on your shoulders, kind of expectations or responsibilities? I'm sure you did.
Yeah, good question, Verticaa, because of course, you're absolutely right. I mean, it is something which weighed on my mind a lot. And for that reason, I think somewhere very consciously, once I had graduated in my undergraduate degree in architecture, I was very clear. And even through those 5 years of the undergraduate degree, I never came and interacted in my father's office or with anybody here. It was not something I wanted to do, because I was very clear that he being what he is and his strong personality and identity, I wanted to somewhere create my own identity or at least my own thoughts. And that's why I kept away. And he also never encouraged that I should be here. So that I think was a wonderful learning if you go back and think of it that way. And the other aspect for me was that I, even after that undergraduate degree, for about almost 7 years, I never came into this office. So it allowed me to absorb what the rest of the world had to offer and how I understood or filtered it. So whether it was my time spent in Europe, working in France, or my time spent many years in the US, first studying and then working there, and before that, even working in India for an architect here in Delhi. So all these experiences helped me create my own kind of identity. So by the time I reached this office, I was already about 28 plus. And that meant that I had formed my own opinions and thoughts. And then after that, even in spite of having spent so much time outside, of course, working under Mr. C.P. Kukreja had its own sort of impression or feeling or sense of awe. And I always did think about it that, he's a legend, he's a genius. He's a superman. How can I ever handle things the way he handles them? And there would be times when I would actually say that to him. I would confide and say that, I don't think I can do what you are doing. And he would be just his single line answer, because he was a man of few words. He would simply say, you'll do it better. I know you'll do it better. So that somewhere, or at that point, I never believed him. I just thought he's saying it for the sake of it. But somewhere it also gave me a sense of confidence.
You have been gathering a lot of exposure and experience from the outside world. What kind of ideas, changes, development did you bring or you wanted to bring during the initial years at C.P. Kukreja Architects?
Yeah, so there are lots of things when you at that formative age in your life, when you've just entered the profession and you're seeing them through these different prisms, whether the prism of being in North America or a prism of being in Europe or, even working in India, you're capturing all these different aspects and you're more experimental in your thought process also. So there were lots of such things that came to my mind and I felt that they need to be brought in here, including the work culture, the way we work here. And for me, that aspect was to a large extent, I felt that, we need to be, at least in our firm, I felt I needed to bring in a culture of collaboration.
Okay.
Because I believe somewhere, and I've seen this even growing up, and I would be a fan of the Indian cricket team or the Indian hockey team, I would see that we would have lots of individual stars. But when they would come together as a team, they would never perform that well. So that I thought was a thing happening even maybe in our profession or in my own firm. I wanted to make sure that here there is a culture of collaboration. We are not sitting in individual silos of excellence, but we are a great team which is breaking those silos. And at C.P. Kukreja Architects, the unique thing is that we aren't just architects. We are a multidisciplinary firm which has architects, structural engineers, electrical, mechanical engineers, sustainability experts, interior designers. All these people are in one office. So all the more reason I felt that there should be a collaborative approach.
Recently, there has been an exhibition that I visited, and there I think you had displayed the master plan of JNU, right? JNU has just completed 50 years of its presence.
Right.
So how does your firm take this? What are the messages that you'd like to give for such a kind of a project?
So, well, yes, when a firm has been around for more than half a century, obviously there's a very large portfolio which is there. But I think in our firm, one thing is very clear, that every project, no matter what typology, no matter its location, no matter the scale or size of the project, every project has been handled sensitively and respectfully and means a lot to us. So this is something which has really truly been an ethos in CPK, that when a project is handled by us, we take a lot of concern towards it, or at least we don't just separate. I know sometimes people talk about categorization within their firm of projects. Some are important, some are less important. That for sure is not a culture we believe in here. So yes, there have been all kinds of projects here of different typologies, and we have always had those same philosophies. The philosophy within CPK remains the same for every project, and that is about creating an architecture which is contextual. So the project must belong to where it is, why it is, what it is, whether it's the site, whether it's the climate, whether it's the culture of the place. All these aspects must inform the project. We don't design projects with a preconceived idea that this is the shape or form of a building and we want to plant it here. That's not the way we approach our projects. So that has been there. Talking about JNU, of course, there was this exhibition which was recently held at the India Art Fair, which was, we have a CP Kukreja Architects, that's the firm. But we've always believed that, besides the firm, there is such a large body of work that has been done in our firm. How do we, take that as a repository of knowledge and share it with the world, share it with students, share it with the young professionals? So we run a foundation which is run by Arunima Kukreja, my wife. It's called the CP Kukreja Foundation for Design Excellence, and there are lots of activities that happen within that foundation. And the Masterplan exhibition of the JNU, which was held, is an outcome or product of that foundation. And the reason for that project being displayed there was that it is not just one of the first significant projects of our firm, but it is more importantly how it is placed in modern architectural history. That if you see that in the history of modern architecture in India and the way institutions should be built, this was a pivotal project at that time. Maybe it didn't get as much attention as it should have or could have, but that's not the point. The point is that today, 50 years later, that project has demonstrated that it stood the test of time what architecture and building should be able to do. And people who visited that exhibition have been in awe of the work which was created in India half a century ago. And that architecture, as I'm sure you'll agree, if you look at the building designs, it is as relevant today as it was 50 years ago, because it's not subscribing to any architectural style, but it's more about how you need to create climate responsive architecture. Yeah.
Now, coming to a very, very new project, the India International Exhibition and Convention Center, IICC, also called the Yashobhoomi. So that's a project which is, kind of making headlines in the international level. So how does it, showcase India in the international stage?
I'm very grateful. I'm also very delighted to see the strides that India is making as a nation, and obviously in the kind of infrastructure we are creating. For long, I was hearing this word in Indian vocabulary, but I almost thought it was cliched that we talked about creating world-class infrastructure. But where was the world-class? I don't know. Yashobhoomi, fortunately, is one such project which has stood to that word, that it is world-class, not just in its scale, being amongst the third largest convention center in the world, or many firsts attached to it, the largest LED facade which has been done in the world, or the largest span structures, that each building is the size of 4 soccer fields that exhibition halls are. So those are massive numbers, so truly makes it world class. But also the fact that how India is able to create that. And that is, I think, quite remarkable. So for me, that project is very special, that yes, the master plan with IDOM, that how the architecture and structural designing of the project has been done, the technology that has been brought into it, that here is a multipurpose or a convention center rather, and that convention center has a capacity of almost 11,000 seats. And within that, at a touch of a button, you can have seats which just go down and get recessed into the floor, and voila, you have a flat hall which can be used for just some other purpose. So this kind of technological marvels coming into India is something which makes me very happy. And having said all of that, from the architecture point of view, I thought it was very important that this project should not look like it belongs to or has been copied from something sitting in Germany or Korea or China. So right from the planning of the project to the architectural design that you see, we have taken inspirations, for example, from the step wells, from the way the ghats along the rivers in Indian cities are, to the element of jali, which is such an intrinsic architectural element in the Indian design vocabulary. So all these aspects that you see in the building are reflecting the nature, or bringing India aloud. And that is really, when I talk about contextual architecture, that is our endeavor. That yes, you create a functional building which might be world function, that it's an international convention and exhibition center. But does and how does it belong to India? That is the design challenge that we take up.
So viewers, I must tell you that Verticaa and Metetia exhibition are happening at Yashobhoomi, and I didn't take time to decide when I came to know, and I used to know that, Dikshu is designing it. So here's the architect behind that project, and all of you are going to see this wonderful, wonderful, as he has told you already about the design language and the world-class, design architecture that has been done. So do you have any message for architects and designers who are going to come to Verticaa and they are going to visit Yashobhoomi for the first time?
Well, my message to the visitors, upcoming visitors of Yashobhoomi would be that yes, please visit not just what is going to be the marvel that Verticaa will do in terms of the event there, but when you are there, experience the place, soak in that experience, and of course, give me your critical feedback as well, because it's only when we hear from people, the users, that we learn more about our buildings and how to improve ourselves. But I think it's important that when you visit that place, you see it both from two sides of a coin that we have looked at. One is creating something which is world class, state of the art, and second, that how and why does it belong to India? What are those design elements in it which I spoke about, that how do they truly reflect a modern contemporary India?
The approach to that project has been different in terms of the way that challenges were faced and the kind of the balance that was required in terms of modernization, restoration, as well as conservation. I'm talking about Bhopal's Hamidia hospital. So, how did your firm navigate through the challenges?
So yeah, Verticaa, that's a good question, and I think you've done good research on what we are designing for having identified.
It's very interesting,
Hamidia.
And yeah.
Yeah, so Hamidia Hospital project is very interesting because it's a complex project. But it's not just the complexity that makes it interesting. I think what makes it very interesting is that how can you here handle projects where half or majority of the things are built, but then you need to go about doing these surgical interventions, changing things around to lift them from another era and not ignore what is historically probably important, but yet make it functionally appropriate to the 21st century. And here I'm talking about a hospital which was built, it's one of the most prominent hospitals of Madhya Pradesh, built on almost 50 acres of land there, but it was all built very organically. So, it's a big functioning hospital, but really it's outdated in many ways. And then because it's happened organically, so nobody ever had a master plan for the place. So when we landed up there, we realized that it is so complex. And just as an aside, if I tell you that in this project, there were 46 religious structures which had been built all over the place. Now, we need to manage the sensitivities of the people from that point of view also, and yet you need to create modern infrastructure. You need to make new buildings there. You cannot allow the existing operations of the hospital to be even shut down for a minute. And yet you have to create these mega buildings, because this was going to be one of the largest hospital projects ever having been taken up in India, 3,000 bed. So there's lots of, like I said earlier, complexity, but challenges that we faced in this project. But those being what they are, I didn't want us to lose focus from the point that here we were working in what is culturally and historically a very significant part of the city. It has its own architectural references to it, being in the old area of Bhopal. So that aspect was very important. It has a certain topography. It is next to the Bada lake that is there in Bhopal, and it is a hilly site. So we didn't want to disturb any of that. So keeping all those kind of contextual, again I would say, parameters, we had to create a modern hospital. So the project has had those aspirations, and we wanted to make sure that these modern buildings that come up there, they are not buildings of glass and steel, which just seem to be shining out there and ignoring what the context has been. They have to be buildings which should show that they are inspired from the buildings which are around. So there's a very famous mosque in Bhopal, the most prominent one, I would say in central India, I guess, is the Taj-ul Masjid. So the 4 minarets of the masjid became an inspiration for us, that how does this modern healthcare facility in itself become a beacon of hope for the people there. So we created these kind of, not minarets, but gave it a contemporary interpretation of creating these elements in the skyline. So there are many such nuances to the architecture of Hamidia. So while we did not get buried in its complexity, we romanticized it, we made it poetic, and yet we made it very functional.
Wonderful. And this particular project is actually from the 18th century, I believe, from there on, organically, I think, it has been to this current state wherein you made the intervention and yet did not intervene as much, absolutely, I would say.
Yeah.
What is what has been CPK's role there, and what are the phases in which we will see Ayodhya transforming?
Right. See, I think Ayodhya project is very important, very significant, and of course, I think it will go down in history also as a very significant project. Now, when I say all this, I'm sure you're thinking because it's the Ram Mandir and Lord Ram's city, but I see it also from a different lens, and that is about how temple towns or places of worship, after all, what is it that human beings brings us together and often divides us also, is religion, or in a belief in a supernatural, a super being there. So here is a city which has really brought our beliefs together, not just Indians all over the country, but Indians all over the world, and frankly some non-Indians as well. I mean, Ram is really a way of life, a belief in many ways, not just somebody you just worship. So from all those points of view, I thought when we got this opportunity, we were selected to create the vision for the city of Ayodhya. I saw it from that perspective. I saw it from different layers of responsibility, of not just what can we build because Ram Mandir will be there. Of course, that's very important. But I also saw this as an opportunity that in a secular country, when we are creating these important spiritual and historical places, I mean, in the vision, the cornerstones of the vision document were that it should become a global tourism destination. It should be a global spiritual destination, and also very importantly, a sustainable development. And that, I think, is the biggest success of Ayodhya, and I'm sure it will come as you see it unravel, that it's a city which understands that here is going to be this exponential growth to it. Now, there are two ways of growing. One is, like we have seen in almost every Indian city, that things only are a catch-up infrastructure. A need comes in, a demand comes in, so you provide it. And there's always the infrastructure is woefully inadequate of its demand at any time. This has been the story of Indian cities, particularly in the 20th century. So here we thought, no, we need to think of Ayodhya differently. We need to realize that if it's going to have an exponential growth, how does that growth take place? And this designing or approach for us was not like you usually do, that you create a master plan and you just, are sitting in air-conditioned rooms and you create the master plan, which is not in sync with reality. For us, it was very important to do extensive research and case studies of similar, I'm not saying identical, similar situation. So it could be the Bethlehem, it could be the Vatican, it could be the Golden Temple or the Amritsar city, Tirupati, Kashi. All these kind of places were very important to understand the pros and cons. What are things that have not gone right and what are things that have been successful there? So from all that learning and all our own understanding of Ayodhya, that's where we started working on this project. And I think the outcome that has come has been absolutely unique. No Indian city has taken this kind of an approach where we have not believed in breaking down what is existing there, demolishing things and then building afresh. We have taken the old city also as is and given it a completely new expression. And that new expression is in times with what you and I have as children heard of stories of the Ram Nagri or the Ram Rajya. Okay. We have taken this whole city back in that time and equipped it with all the modern infrastructure and amenities that a bustling 21st century city needs. So whether it is making it universally accessible, whether it is having sustainable modes of transport, bringing in pedestrianization, giving wider footpaths or benches or lampposts, simple things like this reviving what has been the cradle of civilization anywhere in the world, which is the rivers. Why did old cities settle along the rivers? So rivers were the largest public space in a city. And in the 20th century, we converted our rivers into nalas, or we turned our back towards them. In the Saryu River in Ayodhya, we have again brought it back to be the largest public space or the spine of the city. So all these aspects have gone into the vision document. So yes, I'm very happy that people are responding to it so positively, and the outcome, which is still in the process, of course, because it will take time for all these things to show up. But I'm happy with what has turned out to be.
You've almost, taken me to the time back, what we used to see during the stories of those time around the river, the civilizations and all around river. It sounds very interesting and nice. So all the best for that project. I know it is going to be taking a long time, but when are we going to see some kind of developments in the city in the first phase?
Already, many of them are in place already. So yes, you and I visit Ayodhya, and you will get to see many of the things that have taken place. And many things will obviously take time, because we had divided this into short-term strategies, mid-term strategies, and then longer-term strategies. So what you are seeing is in process, but there are many things that have also been completed.
We know CP Kukreja Architects as a very prominent architecture firm which has completed more than 1,000 projects, and with a large body of various different kinds of projects and work. So can you highlight some kind of defining moments for the firm?
Well, in such a long journey of over 50 years, there have been many milestones, there have been many defining moments, and it's a long history out there. But I would say certainly certain aspects which are really critical in the journey of CP Kukreja Architects is first its beginning. And the beginning was when this 31-year-old young man, back in the late 60s, in times when it was not so easy to travel by air, etc., he took the ship and he went overseas all the way to Canada to do his master's in architecture. And if that wasn't enough, he traveled again across to the other part of the world, to Australia, to do his master's in urban planning. And then if that wasn't enough, he went to England and worked there. So this young man, CP Kukreja, when he returned to India at the age of 31, he won what was at that time a national competition of one of the largest and most significant projects to come up in modern India, which was the JNU. So that, of course, his winning that project is, I would say, the biggest milestone that one can talk about. And from there on, when he took the firm international and opened, I'm talking in the mid-70s, again a time when this was unheard of, he went and opened offices in many cities in different parts of the world. So that was a big milestone. And from there on, one project after another, and of course there were many, many prominent projects that came along. So there are, I think, many milestones out there. And then came the opportunity where I joined the firm, and soon after won again a competition, national competition, for again a very prominent university, which is Gautam Buddha University. So with the legacy of CP Kukreja Architects and JNU, it was something again as a challenge that one had to do only something better. And here Gautam Buddha University went on to be selected amongst the 10 best designed universities in the world. So that was a big feather in our cap, I would say, or a milestone for the firm. And from there on, there are many important projects that have happened, whether it is winning the design for the India Pavilion at the World Expo in Dubai, or designing India's first transit-oriented development project, which is East Delhi Hub, or whether it is Yashobhoomi or Ayodhya. So there are many different milestones, I guess, that have been happening.
And it's continuing.
Yes, I'm happy about that.
Okay. Congratulations for the recent, appointment as the Honorary Consul General of the Republic of Albania. And I would like to know, how are you planning to foster enhanced international relationship between India and Albania, and what are the things going on?
So first of all, thank you for your compliments. And yes, this is a completely new hat I'm wearing, and one that is very exciting, because as I was mentioning to you earlier, that for me, it's always about expanding my boundaries. It is about living life once, but then living it to the fullest. And for that, I like to expand myself professionally and see what all I can do. So besides the realm of architecture, which I do and will continue to do till many, many more years to come, I felt that it was important that I take this kind of an opportunity which came when I was selected to become the Honorary Consul General of the Republic of Albania and represent that country completely in India, which is a huge responsibility, because here now you're talking about two nations and being at the pivot in terms of responsibility, because I'm by default in a way the ambassador of the country, to make sure that these two countries can foster their relations and foster relations not architecturally but in every sphere of this world. So be it politics, be it trade and economics, be it culture, or be it even people-to-people relationship. So all these aspects are very important in fostering relationship between two countries. And for me, this is, like I said, a huge responsibility, but also an open canvas where one can create and paint images and paint a direction which can shape the destiny of these two nations moving together.
What I see, as you're talking, I see that it's like designing the new language of communication and connecting both the countries together in different aspects.
That's very beautiful.
And with your kind of energy, you needed something more than what you were doing, and you wanted to touch the spheres of different kind of a thing. And I think this is a really great thing which has come to the right person.
Thank you so much, but very well put and very well described. That's very true, that it is that kind of designing really, and I think it is a responsibility that one must take to the fullest and perform to the fullest. So I see this at that level, and I'm very excited about it, and I'm already happy that one is being able to make a mark here, and within literally a couple of months of being appointed, less than 2 months, I'm happy that we have the foreign minister of Albania visiting India, which has not happened in years, and that will be, I'm sure, a stepping stone for relationship between the two countries to start getting closer and stronger. So yes, it's very exciting, and thank you. Pleasure.
I want to also know about, you have been talking about a 15-minute city. 15-minute city, what is that?
This has been this notion has been around for some time, the last few years, and it has really been sort of invented or started in France, and they have been talking about it. So I subscribe to it in some ways. So yes, cities need to grow, but is that the answer to civilization? I don't think so. I feel everything needs to have a certain boundary at the end of the day. Everything has to be within certain limits, right? So here cities have gone beyond that, and that is beginning to affect us, those who live in cities, in every which way, whether it is the climate, whether it's the environment that we are in, whether it is the safety, security of people living in cities, their happiness index. All these aspects, I think, are getting affected. So that's why I come back. Whether you call it a 15-minute or a 14-minute or a 16-minute city, the point here is that I only believe that everything has to have a finite value, and therefore as human beings, as urban planners and architects and designers, we need to take that responsibility that we need to find the right sustainable solutions. Just creating these metropolitan areas that Delhi today has become what? It's gone beyond into, really inserted itself into Rajasthan and UP and Haryana, and it just keeps becoming metropolises. I don't think that is the answer to civilization or to urban living. So that's where my notion of the 15-minute city, as you expressed, comes.
So I have been following your initiative, The Tale of Two Cities, where you have been telling that yes, the leaders of a country need to be like the CEO of an organization, working for the country in that way. So can you elaborate on that?
I think you have a wonderful question there, Verticaa. Yes, the Tale of Two Cities has been, in that sense, very important initiative, I would say, of saying that how we need to, step back for a moment and appreciate that we can learn from each other. And when I say each other, it could be people living in cities on two ends of the planet, Why do we believe that the person on the other side never has a solution and we only have to struggle to find our solutions? That is one of the prime objectives of Tale of Two Cities, that here is a city, let's say sitting in South America, called Bogota, and here is Ahmedabad. And let's scratch the surface and see what we can discover between these two cities. Similarly, Mexico City and Mumbai, or many other examples that you saw in that television series. So this was one of the prime aspects of it. And yes, within that show, what I thought also was a point of discussion and discovery for me is that really today, cities on the one hand need to be very participative. Citizen participation is very important. But the administrators of cities need to really start thinking of themselves in a more 360-degree manner. In the 20th century, most cities have been governed or managed in a way where, there were only rules being set, the do's and don'ts that a citizen can do. I don't think that's the only way to look at a city. I think people who manage cities, they could be the mayors or other political leaders or city administrators, depending on which part of the world, how the city is looked at or structured. But whoever is at the helm needs to understand that they need to look at the city just like a CEO in an organization needs to look. So what does a CEO do? He looks at HR also, he looks at finance also, he looks at business development also, and he looks at processes also. Or besides even more things. All these aspects are something that he gives, which I would call a 360-degree view. So that is what I was referring to when I said that, people who head cities should literally start thinking of themselves as CEOs and not as school headmasters or policemen who are only meant to tell us what to do and what not to do.
If you are asked to give an advice to the 20-year-old, 25-year-old sort of, Dikshu, what are the messages, what are the advices that you would give?
Very interesting again. Verticaa, this is a very interesting interview where you're making me really think of things I might not have otherwise. But I would say if I was to give a 20-year-old Dikshu advice, I would just say that do exactly what you have been doing, because it's been a journey so far which has been full of surprises, but very eventful and very satisfying also. Now, satisfying doesn't mean that there's a sense of complacency that is setting in, that I feel been there, done that, and that's enough. Certainly not, actually the opposite. But I think the journey has been so eventful that I would not want to change it any other way. So I would tell the 20-year-old Dikshu that, keep it up and follow the same.
So all the falls, all the getting up and everything actually makes the whole thing so interesting.
Unless you don't fall, how will you get up? Unless you don't go down a bit, how will you succeed? So failure has to happen for success to take place. So I think these are things that you have to take more holistically. It is not something where you can describe yourself as being, literally a failure. But failures or learnings, they are actually a source of learning, right?
Yes. Stepping stone to success.
Absolutely, yes.
So do you think, those who are coming to the design business should learn management as well along with their design studies?
Certainly, I definitely think so. And even when I myself, for example, when I was at Harvard, I was at the Graduate School of Design. And then I was, I think, the only design student that semester who decided to go and take courses at the Harvard Business School. And my friends in the design school would wonder that, what are you doing? Are you planning to shift out of architecture or something? And I felt that why are there these boundaries? I mean, at the end of the day, what is architecture or design for that matter? We are doing this for society. We are doing these for patrons or clients. So it is always better, you are a more informed designer if you understand your client. And you cannot think that there's a boundary between yourself and the client. I've never believed in that. So therefore, my advice to the young designers would also be that, you need to understand the management skills of what you are doing. Only then you can do it better. It could be the process of managing design. It could be the process of managing the project, or it could be the process of managing your client. It is management at the end of the day. So why not learn it? I certainly believe that it has helped me very much, but it's not just that course that helped me, it's that mindset. I think that is my mindset, for a good or bad, that I've always believed that there's nothing to be shy of being a successful architect, meaning not just that you are designing stupendous buildings, but you're designing them within time, within cost, and within a great quality. So if you're doing all these things, you need to be able to manage every aspect of it, not just the design process, but everybody else who is associated with that project, which could be your clients, or it could be your construction company, or any other players who come into it. So for me, management and the business side of architecture is very important.
So if you are asked to give some important key advice for those who are starting up, or they are in the initial phase of their work and their firm, what would you tell them?
So my first and foremost advice, which I give the youngsters here in my office, as well as when I lecture students across the world, is that, look, this is a field which we all realize is a challenging, difficult profession to be in. Difficult because it involves many aspects and facets to it, whether it is the, taking, let's say, our school subjects forward. It involves chemistry, it involves physics, it involves mathematics, it involves history, it involves geography, it involves everything else. So what is it that architecture doesn't cover? So from that point of view, it is a challenging subject and a challenging field that one is entering into. But the success, or the recipe to success, I would say, is having a passion for it and having a positive attitude. If you're positive about what you're doing, if you have a passion for it, all those challenges begin to become very simple and easy to surmount. And that is what my advice to youngsters is always.
When joined CP Kukreja Architects for the first time, you tried to bring in the collaboration aspect of it. Can you elaborate, how can the young designers understand the value of collaboration?
So from a design point of view, if I talk about collaboration, again, I would say that design is a complex activity and it involves many different aspects to creating something. And therefore, in my opinion, there's always the success comes if you can do this in a team spirit, if you can collaborate with people, because look, as humans, we all individually have our strengths and our weaknesses. Now, if we can bring together the strengths of multiple people, the outcome can be that manifold better. So I have always believed that collaboration. So if I talk about a building, if I can think of it as an architect, but if I also collaborate right at the conceptual stage of the project with a structural engineer, with an electrical engineer, with an air conditioning engineer, I feel the result is very different. And I have many such examples I could tell you in our projects how we do. Like, for example, if you heard of the Pathway School, which we did in Gurgaon, now that was a project which was selected as the most innovative institutional design in the world when it got created. Now that's a huge sort of accolade that came its way. But what were some of the aspects of it? I didn't just take a blank piece of canvas and start drawing and saying this is a school, but we right in the beginning collaborated with everybody in our office, which is in-house, the team of firefighting engineers, electrical engineers, and we asked everybody to give their input. And then as an architect, we start finding the solutions. So here the inputs that came from the simple aspects of how the firefighting can be handled in this project, how the air conditioning can be handled in this project, that led to what today you see are unique things that were created in Pathway School. So for me, collaboration is not only the key, it's a must of how you design projects.
Thank you so much. And with this, we go to the end of the show, and I have some questions which are, I think I already know the answers. Like, if not an architect, what would you be? An architect, isn't it? True. Or a fashion model. Is there any other facet of Dikshu that many people do not know? Something interesting that we do not yet know?
I try to be as transparent and an open book as I can. As you know, I'm pretty vocal with my thoughts, my beliefs, my convictions. So I don't carry any secrets really. I am not sure if there is anything that is not out there. But of course, one of the facets of my life which is very important to me is my personal life. And I think whatever I have been able to achieve, whatever little that has come my way so far, is thanks to my wife and my two daughters, who are always a source of inspiration and in every which way support me. So without that, I think I would be completely incomplete. So that is one aspect probably I don't speak about so much.
So you're doing so much of things. How do you relax?
I don't relax. At least that's the way my wife terms it. I just love to go on 24/7. or at least as long as I can, till I'm completely exhausted and fall on the bed and sleep in a matter of few seconds. But even in my sleep, actually, I must share this with you that I dream about buildings. I dream about buildings all the time. So what I've discovered as a very sensible way to a happy marriage is that I have a small pad and a pen lying by my bedside, and without turning the lights on, I do a little sketch or a doodle or scribble on that pad, so that the next morning when I actually wake up, that idea or the dream hasn't got swept away, and I've been able to capture it.
Wow, this is so interesting and so amazing. Recently, I heard about a quote, I keep on reading a lot of things because those are filtered kind of knowledge.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Which is given
Yes.
to by someone who has really seen a lot of things.
Yes. Quotes are
So
all.
there it said that if you want to, get an idea, think about it and ask the question and go to sleep.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh,
The universe
interesting.
conspires to give you that idea.
Oh, really? That's interesting.
So in fact, you're already doing it. So finally, any message for me, my team, and Surfaces reporter, of course, Air Asia and all.
So first, my message would be to you, since you've given me this amazing opportunity. I didn't expect it that you would allow me to give you a message, that you have spoken all about me, heard all about me, but I think somewhere the world needs to know about all the marvelous things you do, because you are a true entrepreneur. You have been path-breaking in many, many respects in the profession, and the kind of passion that I see in you, that is something you should be talking about as well and sharing with others, because really how these turn out to be inspiring stories for people, you never know. Who could be that reader, who could be that listener, who could be that viewer when you go up there and talk about what your experiences have been, how that can shape somebody else, you never know. But I think that my message to you is, first of all, compliments for all that you have achieved and the efforts you have made. And of course, to your wonderful team here, which has been able to put this together. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you so much. To be in your aura is always so special for me. And I know that the more that I want to learn from you, the more ahead you have so many more things coming up.